there's absolutely nothing good about him. And pretty obvious that he wouldn't quit. Will he get out of politics? Or is he going to try to come back? Or he clearly has a party which is with him. And all you got to do is take a look at what's been happening to those rare Republicans that have basically cast him aside. I mean, they are getting beat up every day. So I'm afraid we'll see, but I'm afraid we're in for not a very pleasant few years. On the other hand, I'm a fan of Joe Biden's. I like him. I like what he's doing. I think the team that he has put together is a very good one, and we've got a great opportunity to get out there and do some very, very good things, even with a very tight margin. No margin to speak of when it comes to the Senate. And let's hope that there will be some Republicans that will be participating in a constructive next 4 years. But we shall see, folks. We'll see. And I can't remember anybody in my political career who was quite as corrupt, quite as bad, and as frightening in some ways as this guy. So we shall see. We shall see. I don't know what happened in Washington on what was the date of that crazy thing? Somebody help me.
January 6th.
January 6th.
January 6th, yeah. January 6th, but it was a security nightmare. I mean, I don't understand why people weren't ready for something like this. I mean, it was pretty obvious that something was going to happen. And but it's quite obvious what happens when you put the security in, people disappear, and there we are. But it's going to be we've got to get going on this pandemic. I mean, our state of all, great health state is behind. Kitty and I are still waiting for notice that we're going to get vaccinated, and we were supposed to be. I mean, we're in our 80s, so we're supposed to be at the top of the list. But much to do, and at least we've got this guy out of government. Let's hope he's out of politics permanently, because I've never seen anything like that. I don't have any brilliant ideas as to what we should do here. I like what Biden has already done. I like the team he's put together. I like the fact that that he's focusing on those important issues, and I'm really a lot more interested in how you guys feel about this and what you have to say, and what you think we should be doing collectively to get this country back on track. I'm also very, very concerned, folks, about the foreign policy side of things. Here we go again, a new Cold War, this time with China. I'm still trying to figure out when China became the enemy. We've got a planet which is challenged existentially. The climate problem alone is very, very serious, as I'm sure we all know and believe. And here we go with space wars again. What is it? Continues to kind of head in that direction. I think American foreign policy has had real problems dealing with this, mostly because we just can't seem to do what? Stop intervening all over the world in places where we just fail. And that continues 16 years in Afghanistan. And it's worse, not better. So much to do on the foreign policy side, needless to say, and nothing that Trump did, obviously, during his 4 years did anything to help that. But again, I've got a lot of confidence in Biden and his experience and his understanding of what's going on in the world, and I hope that we can sit down with people and begin solving some of these problems, and do it as quickly as possible. And I'm an optimist when it comes to that. Not quite sure I understand what's going on in Russia these days. I'm not sure Russians know what's going on in Russia, and obviously China is going to be an important factor in all of this. But I refuse to believe that human beings cannot sit down together and solve problems and look for common ground in those areas where we do agree. Okay, so there are some things we don't agree with the Chinese on, but we certainly, they're as concerned as we are about climate change and what it's going to do to this planet if we don't do something about it. And I think one of the things we ought to be doing, and I hope Biden will be doing, will be to connect with them and begin to go to work on issues of common concern where we can reach agreement. And let's not go down the Cold War road again. I mean, many of us who I'm looking at, all of you, or most of you at least, lived through the Cold War. That's the last thing in the world we need at this point in time. And I hope we can begin to do some constructive things. And we just passed a bill, a defense budget bill, which is going to cost us $750 billion a year. $750 billion a year, folks. We've got over 800 American bases in 150 countries. Doing what? I hope those are issues that Biden and company can work on constructively. I don't know how you feel about this. Feel free to disagree, but we've just got too many important things to deal with that where we can, I think, develop constructive solutions to some of these problems and avoid another Cold War, which will cost us all a ton and solve nothing. End of opening statement, Bob. That's it.
All right. Looks like we got Alex Clemens, Tom Kosh, and Father Mike Russo. Alex, you're up. Alex, you're on mute.
Sorry, no question here. I just was adding in the one nice thing that Donald Trump had done into chat, but nice to see you, Governor, and everybody else.
And with that, we'll go to Tom Kosh, Mike Russo, and Peter Logan. Tom, you're up.
I mentioned this to the governor in our previous get-togethers. I was a delegate for him very proudly. Mike, 33 years ago, just a third of a century, so really around the corner.
We've been around for a while.
To prove
oh my God.
My bona fides. I want to talk a little bit about electoral issues.
Yeah.
Governor, you were the first Democrat to carry states west of the Rocky Mountains, with the exception of Hawaii, since Lyndon Johnson. Humphrey did carry Washington, but you carried Oregon for the first time. You overperformed President Biden by 18% in Iowa. You did as well as any Democrat since LBJ in Iowa. And yet you underperformed him by 33% in California, by 39% in Vermont, a state that you oddly didn't carry, but you outperformed President Biden by 43% in West Virginia, a state you did carry. That suggests that it's not so much about the candidate, but about demographic trends that are, intrinsic to specific states and regions of the country. Having said that, what we have to work with are our candidate choices and the messaging they have. Senator Portman announced today that he's not running for re-election. We may have seen that. Senator Grassley could very well not run again from Iowa. Ron Johnson might not run in Wisconsin. Toomey's not running in Pennsylvania. Burr's not running in North Carolina. These are all states that a good candidate could win for us. So since you've proven to be a trailblazing candidate in your own right in different areas that were theretofore not ours, what do you suggest? That's my long-winded speech there.
Well, Uh, it's a damn good question. Why did I carry West Virginia by 12 points, Iowa by 10,
Right.
lost Vermont? Well, part of that's demographic, but we've got, as a party, we've got to be, I think, a presence in these states. What is the Democratic Party doing, for example, in West Virginia these days, other than losing by enormous? I mean, West Virginia was a Democratic state.
Forever.
What has the Democratic Party been doing in West Virginia? What has it been advocating? What was it about those things that the Democrats were doing back when I ran and before that that made a state like West Virginia a Democratic state? Working class, poor, and it was, I think I carried it by more than any other state, including Massachusetts for that matter. We were deeply involved in what I call regional development, economy building in those states. We had specific programs that we were advocating in those states. We had, remember the regional commissions?
Mhm.
Am I the only one around here, or maybe a
No,
few of us who remember the regional commissions? What happened to them? They've disappeared. They've been eliminated. They're gone. No wonder we're losing a West Virginia by dozens and dozens of points. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing my best to advocate with the new administration is a return to that kind of targeted economic. Whoop, here comes the former First Lady of Massachusetts. Hi, sweetie. These are our friends from San Francisco, and who's that? That's your daughter. That's Cara. Yeah. Anyway, I think we've got to get back. That's Nora, your granddaughter.
Sorry
Um,
for the interruption.
It's okay. Anyway, I think we've got to, in addition to a lot of these other things, I mean, I think we've got to do good things for rural hospitals and that kind of stuff, but helping those states to rebuild and revive their economies and create good jobs and attract companies and others who will go into those states with plenty of support and help them to rebuild what have been very weak economies, I think is an important part of this.
Mhm.
And we've been virtually absent on that front for some time. Feel free to disagree with me, but I don't know what the Democratic program is for those kinds of states that need help and need support. And they're states that should be ours. We should be winning them easily, in my opinion. But we got to show people that we care, and we've got to have a strategy for dealing with their economic issues that connects with them and works. What do you think of that? Or am I?
That makes sense.
I mean, there are folks. There are folks, and we should be working very closely with them. We know how to do this. Look, I inherited a Massachusetts, which was an economic basket case in the mid-70s. Now it's, doing extremely well. Why? Well, we decided we'd go to work and try to help that state rebuild its economy, invest in job creating opportunities, and we still have some problems in certain parts of the state, but by and large, it's a state that's done extremely well, and it was because of what I would call a targeted economic development program, and It's not that we don't know how to do that, but you got to look at a state, look at a region, look at its strengths, some of its weaknesses, and do some investing in its economic future. And
If I
trust
may
me,
follow up,
it works.
Bob, our governor, the factor that really, in my opinion, has changed these places since your candidacy, and your candidacy was sort of the very beginning, cutting early edge of it, is the advent of mega churches and evangelical Christianity. If you look at the demographic data of the vote of this last election, the number one determinant of one's likelihood of voting for Trump, of all people, the thrice married porn star, hush money paying Republican incumbent, was regular attendance at church. And so what seems to have happened in places like West Virginia, in Iowa, in the Dakotas, where we used to have McGoverns and Dashells and people like that representing those states, is that this hierarchy of church dominance in politics seems to have done everything.
It's a factor. I'm not sure it's a determining factor. Don't know, I mean, we're all kind of exploring this, but I wish that I saw a strong, effective, targeted economic strategy for these states. And we had an opportunity to see whether or not the economic issues weren't, in this particular case, dominating the religious developments. My experience is that they do, but we shall see. But the lack of any attention, focus on the, I mean, you remember the Appalachian Regional Commission under Jack Kennedy and the regional commissions that followed? Every region of the country had them. Every region of the country had them with federal as well as state participation. They're gone, disappeared. Doesn't make any sense to me. Though I grant you there's something to be said for what you said. Here comes Kitty Dukakis.
And the next question is from Father Mike Russo. Father Mike Russo, then Peter Logan, and then Judy Palnick. Father Mike, you're up.
Go ahead.
Hi there. Well, as a priest of almost 50 years, I kind of wonder about my own church when the question is, who is the greater Catholic, Donald Trump or Joe Biden? I mean, it's amazing. My question has a little bit to do with you and Kitty. How will you accept President Biden's appointment as the U.S. ambassador to Greece?
No.
Can we start the rumor?
No.
But maybe more seriously, how will you help the Biden administration? And let me go back to your early history. One of the things we need is kind of a forum to really clear the air about truth and reconciliation. I remember your days when you were on the Advocates. That's the first time I ever heard of Mike Dukakis. But we need a cogent conversation in this country that identifies truth from falsehood and political malarkey from, some way in which we can address the major issues of our time. You're an inspiration and have always been in that regard. So how could you lend your hand to Joe Biden's important work?
Look, I just had my 87th birthday. Happened to be on the 3rd of November. So we all got a pretty good birthday present on that day, although it took, as we all know, weeks and weeks and weeks of this nonsense to finally lock in that victory. But look, I'm getting up there a little bit. Feel fine. Just retired. But as soon as Kitty and I get vaccinated, I think we'll be liberated and have a chance to get out and begin to do things. And I'm going to try to focus as best I can on the very topic that we're talking about here. And that is, how do you go into states that are hurting? And a number of these states are hurting. And help them to revive their economies and their spirits and convince them that Democrats really care about them and their future. I don't think we've done that very well, which is one of the reasons why we've got these states that ought to be automatic Democratic states that aren't with us. Now, at the same time, we've got something like Georgia. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, the New York Times yesterday had a long story on the Reverend's dog,
So
his campaign. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't have a dog. Might have won, but it was really, you need different strategies for different states, but you need people to feel that we need people to feel that we care deeply about them and their families and their future. And I'm not sure we've done that very well.
Peter Logan, I'm sorry. Peter Logan, you're up. You're on mute, Peter.
All right, you missed my great speech. All right. Anyway, it's nice to see you again and see some familiar faces from around the luncheon tables. I have a question about the second impeachment, and it's very narrow. So bear with me. I'll try to really focus in on it quickly. I've seen in the San Francisco Chronicle, and I'm sure other places, the rationale for the impeachment being to stop Trump from running again. So I want to put aside whether it's legal after he's left office or whether the grounds are there, just on the idea that he's going to be back unless we stop him now. Impeachment and conviction, meaning he would be barred from doing that. It strikes me that, and I'd like your comment, but is a real vote of no confidence in democracy. And people know who he is. And we certainly faced a trying election, but democracy prevailed there. Biden's in office. So what are your thoughts about that rationale? We need to convict him, impeach him, just to stop him from running again. Thanks very much.
I want to flip it back to you guys first. And I mean this, and get a sense from you as to how you feel about that.
Should we do a show of hands? Say, just for impeaching, convicting on the lines of what Peter mentioned. My hand went up.
I think he ought to be convicted because I think what he did was criminal.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different issue, though, than I'm trying to raise.
Well, I'm not sure it's that different. I mean, I think what he did was criminal. I think it was impeachable. I think he's a very dangerous guy. I think he has, he's about as corrupt as anybody we've ever had in that office. And if we can do it, I'm for impeaching and convicting. But how do the rest of you feel?
Let's open it up. Yeah, but I see a lot of hands go up and a lot of thumbs go up. So that is a kind of an idea of perhaps where the conversation is going.
On the basis of just that rationale only, there's other people that could vote for somebody else for the same reason they'd vote for him. So I'm not so sure that rationale. I mean, I would like to see him impeached and convicted as well, but because of his criminal acts.
But
My thoughts.
who's saying that? Who's saying it's to prevent him from running again? I think that's coming mostly from Republicans. I haven't heard.
I saw it in a cartoon. I can find it if you want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
but
it's
exactly.
true.
That's
A political cartoon.
I thought it was in the Constitution.
My thoughts are this. If this is a distraction from Biden's ambitious agenda, I don't support it. all of us politicos on here, and there's so many smart people here, we know that Biden has 6 months to a year to accomplish anything of significance. And so if the impeachment impedes that, I'm not for it. I never want to see Donald Trump on TV or a ballot ever again. But on the other hand, I want to make sure that the ambitious Biden agenda is successful. So those are my thoughts.
Why would you think, Tim, why do you think they're inconsistent?
I think that by having the trial, that would give conservative media outlet things to talk about, things to slow down. We'd have senators that would sort of slow things down. You know, maybe I'm in the minority, but I think Biden only has a short window of time to really get a lot of ambitious through. Unlike 2009, where Obama wanted to sort of play ball with the Republicans, I don't think Biden and the team want to. I think they have an opportunity to once a generation to get things done, and I'm hopeful that we can do that. And in my opinion, maybe the group sees it differently. I think impeachment might be a distraction. What are everybody's thoughts?
What do you think?
Governor Jim Brosnan from Brookline. It's nice to see you again. I think that it has to be done. And my view, which is dark, is that we came what happened? We came very close to a political takeover against the vote of the American people. I think that's what happened. And if we don't do everything in our power, and this may be probably beyond our power, then we're on a road to future problems. What occurred was an incitement in violation, clear violation. I mean, Cruz went to the Harvard Law School, and the other guy, Hawley, I guess, went to the Yale Law School. They can read. It's very clear. Even the vice president understood what the law was, and they attempted to take over the government. Now, if you're not going to act on that, and the problem I have is trying to divide what needs to be done from the political analysis. I agree with what's suggested about the political analysis. I certainly do. I want Biden to succeed, and I want him to have everybody's attention and get things done. I want all that. But this is not like anything in my lifetime, and I'm your age, Governor.
I don't know. Joe McCarthy wasn't too far behind, you know.
Well, I remember that too.
Yeah.
This is Michael Werner. I'm no expert, but I agree with the previous speaker. And I personally don't think that, this is just my opinion, I think without his bully pulpit and the round-the-clock news coverage that he gets, and given his short attention span, I think Trump is going to fade away. And I don't think we need to, it'd be good to put a nail in the coffin, but I'd be astonished if he were a viable candidate in 2024.
Let me ask you, let me ask you all this. Supposing the trial could be limited to 2 weeks.
It's too long.
Isn't that possible?
Well, it doesn't.
So this is Kevin Wilk,
Bob?
the mayor of
Kevin,
Walnut
where are you?
Creek. And I think there have to be consequences. As the previous couple of speakers said, he incited a riot. He looked to not just overturn the government, overturn elections and democracy. I believe if he had succeeded, then frankly, we might have seen our last free and fair elections for the rest of our lives. If there aren't consequences, a future president can point back to this and say, hey, President Trump wasn't convicted of doing this, and somebody who is savvier, less like Trump in personality, but perhaps more intelligent, we could be in real trouble. And this, I would equate this simply to a bank robber who attempts to rob a bank, doesn't succeed, leaves the country, and the police then say, well, he's left the country. Why do we have to convict him now? He's gone already. No, we have to hold him accountable. And if we don't, then what does our Constitution and what does an impeachment even mean?
I'm going to put a member of Congress on the spot here. Mark? He's laughing. Mark, what do you think? Mark Desaulnier, member of Congress from the great state of California.
Well, thanks, Bob. I'm sorry I'm late. I was in a meeting with some constituents, and I love to be part of this, particularly because although I'm a resident of the great state of California, I'm a native of the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I'm a great admirer of Governor Dukakis and have.
And how are you doing, by the way? Okay, health is good?
Health is good.
Right, terrific.
I've had my vaccines. My doctors tell me I can return to work. So that's
Right.
good news, bad news sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just agree with what Kevin said. I from the day it happened, I was in the Capitol when it happened. Nancy's been great to me, so I was able to, although I had to fly back and I've had health issues in the last year. I almost passed away in March. And my immune system was very compromised. So I was in a room next to the floor so that I could walk out and vote and still be somewhat quarantined. And I could see the people coming up. I could see what he said. And when the officer shot and killed one of the protesters, I was at the end of that hallway. Just both a personal, professional thing. I completely agree with Kevin. I have advocated for what we did in the House and impeachment, and it's a very strange environment to be in Congress right now. So since you put me on the spot, Bob, there's got to be consequences. You got to hold people accountable. And I will say that as one of the last liberal Republicans in the state of California, when I first ran for office 30 years ago, the purification, pardon for the use of the word, of the Republican Party, this is what you get. And a lot of my colleagues on the other side, and I try to work very hard in a bipartisan way. We've still got a real big problem in this country, particularly in Congress. And then I'm just reminded of something in a previous one of these with Governor Dukakis, where if Governor Dukakis said, you wanted a difference. A lot of people complained that there wasn't enough of a differentiation between the Republican and Democratic Party. So I don't know if you remember this, Governor, but you said, well, now you've got a differentiation. What the Koch brothers in particular wanted to do in purifying and working in Republican parties, and since we see Senator Portman leaving today, and his heir apparent is Jim Jordan, and what a horrible, horrible change for Ohio, if that's the case. And hopefully Tim Ryan, a colleague and a friend, will run against Representative Jordan. But a real problem. These people don't want to solve problems. They don't want to. And just let me end with, there is a little symmetry between the ideological extremes, but not much, I don't think, at least in Congress. So I hope we don't go that way. As somebody who's one of the most liberal members of Congress, you got to get stuff done. And it's a real problem in Congress right now. So you asked, Bob, that's for asking a member of Congress to speak.
Will he be convicted? Will the Senate convict? Will they vote to convict?
I don't think so. I hate to be, but I think the more interesting conversation is the filibuster and where we go from there. But I think we have to have the public hearing. And given what the New York Times has reported in the last couple of days, I'm okay with waiting a couple of weeks because I think more things are going to come up.
Yeah.
And it'd be more difficult for them to do what, to not convict him. I think the more time
goes on.
This is a really troubled individual. Pardon me.
Yeah. For sure. Clinically. How about the rest of you?
You said this, Governor, but we came really close. I mean, he wanted to make himself the Putin of the United States. I mean, and this was not a well thought out. I think to Kevin's point, his incompetence was our strength, but along with our institutions. But we came much closer, I should say, to having a real constitutional problem.
Although one wonders a little bit, Mark, why the Capitol was so unprepared for this? Why was that the case?
It's more than
everybody.
I've got a lot of good relationships with Capitol police officers, both from the deputy chief came back to get me, they had actually somewhat forgot about me because they got most of the members out. So they had to bring some officers back in. They were having a really rough time. And then, and I think we're going to find this out. The far right and its impact on law enforcement is something we got to really look at, including the Capitol Police.
Really?
Before we get to the next question, there's one thing that Tom brought up about churches, and since we have Scotty on the line, Scotty McLennan, I wanted to get your thoughts on what he was talking about, the impact of evangelical churches on the body politic. Scotty retired. He was dean of religious life, I think, at Stanford. Is that correct? Wrote a great book called Jesus is a Liberal. And for those who read Doonesbury, he is the I'd say half of the character of Reverend Scotty Sloan.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'm very concerned about the impact of white evangelicals for a long time on the body politic. And the fact that more than 80% of them support Trump is disturbing, since they claim to support issues like character and sexual ethics and a variety of other things. So it's of great concern. And I think it may be that politics trump religion in general, may be the bottom line.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ellen worked for the 82 campaign, the Dukakis campaign.
I did. I worked for Massachusetts, Governor Dukakis, and I was big in the campaign in Dorchester, where we lived at the time. I was the ward chairman.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the next question. Go ahead.
Can I ask you guys this question? Is there any evidence that the evangelical church movement, whatever, is beginning to move away from Trump, or are they still just kind of locked in?
There's some really effective evangelicals who have raised these concerns all along, and I think in terms of percentage, yes, there is a small movement away, and there are people that are trying to speak up. The major journal that Billy Graham founded, Christianity Today, moved away a month ago, and so I think there's some movement away from Trump and the evangelical church for sure. And there's some very powerful evangelical speakers that have said what he's done has not been in any way related to Christianity.
Yeah, but on that point, if I may, absolutely true. But we also had the Lincoln Project as an example of Republicans that fought against the Trump's reelection, did some of the best ads of the cycle. To this day, Trump's approval among Republican voters and among that cohort is astronomical, notwithstanding everything. It suggests that the decision to be part of that group supersedes everything, including the economic interests that Mike has talked about, and including common decency. That seems to be true. That's the only thing that explains their voting behavior, in my opinion.
You might be right. And with that, we're going to move on to Judy Palnick, Roger Kaplan, and Heath, then Andrew. So Judy, you're up.
Okay, well, in context, I think still about with all the conversation of whether this is against democracy, if we are impeaching him, don't want him to run, and all the pressure of the Republicans to sort of buy into their hanging on to power by their Trump supporters. Would we be better off if some Republicans kept their Republican Party and allowed the Trumpers to become a third party? I mean, we've always thought about having, the Bernie wing being our third party, but frankly, would we be better off having a third party of these Trumpers? Because, I am afraid they will not convict. That the Republicans will not convict, that they're still buying this fake, dangerous, this is dangerous. And the next time, they will get to possibly Pence or somebody else, or, it's awfully frightening. So I just sort of wondered what, you thought about a third party of letting the Trumpers be there. And is there a chance that the Republicans will split?
I think one of the questions is if the good Republicans remain, and how many are there?
Right.
Where are they?
Are there any good Republicans, exclusive of the gentleman from California?
He's been a Democrat for a long time, though.
Yeah, I'm a former.
Former. No, but I mean, look, I worked with some damn good Republicans in my career. Good people. In fact, in Massachusetts, it was the Republicans who were the founders of Planned Parenthood, who were the environmentalists of the time, and conservationists, as we used to call them. They were good people, and when it came to civil liberties, they were in many ways a lot more focused and a lot more committed to civil liberties than some Democrats. And remember too, back in the Depression, did we have a guy named Father Coughlin who was out there doing his thing? I mean, but that was the Republican Party of the time. Very few of them. If who is it? Portman, who's leaving? Well, he's another guy who's one of that kind of remaining group of Republicans that most of us, I think, would be able to work with effectively and do good things with. So I'm not sure what's left. Any of you follow it? What's going on in Arizona?
Yeah.
I mean, what does that tell you? Cindy McCain and Flake endorsed Joe Biden.
I read one where 16 million Republicans in the last 4 years have left the party. They've not become Democrats, but they become independents or what have you. But 16 million, and since the 6th of January, the Republicans have been hemorrhaging people. So you have a much more concentrated Republican Party than in the past. Whether the Democrats can take advantage of it remains to be seen.
Good question. Yeah.
What we've been seeing since January 6th, maybe smarter people who pay much more attention to this have seen that, but that's what I understand.
And Tim, you don't get a sense that it's the moderate Republicans that are kind of assuming control or responsibility for what's going on. They are leaving, aren't they?
They're the ones that are leaving.
Yeah.
But they didn't vote for Democrats in Congress.
Yeah. Victor, what do you think from your perch of the nation?
Well, what do I think about what?
What where the Republican Party is going? Is it becoming more of a smaller, more extremist party? The idea of the big tent seems to be long gone. And what I mean, when you look back, we've had a couple of people from the nation join us in the past. Jones joined us, Joan Walsh. But what is your take on that?
Well, my take is that there is no Republican Party anymore, that people have gone off in so many different directions, and there's no spokesperson for it that one can trust as speaking for the so-called what we used to think of as the Republican Party.
But Vic, welcome, by the way. You in the Berkshires these days?
Yes, I'm in the Berkshires. And
I hope we'll see you out there one of these days when I get my license back. But you don't get a sense that moderates moderates are leaving the Republican Party.
Right. So hi, this is Vincent Caprio. So I actually was a member of Bush alumni for Biden, and so I live in Fairfield County, Connecticut. My congressman was Chris Shays, and I'm good friends with Chris. And we have meetings about this so Judge Gregg and Chris Shays and John from Ohio were all Bush alumni for Biden, and we have webinars like this, and we communicate. And what's happened with the impeachment is, and Governor, you would understand this, the Bush family, the Cheney family, the McCain family, and the Romney family have raised tens of billions of dollars for the Republican Party. All those four families all want to see President Trump convicted. When during the day of the 6th, during the speech he gave to incite the rioters, he targeted Liz Cheney. Dick Cheney called Liz Cheney during that conversation, and most of us believe that that's when he crossed the line. He's attacked McCain unmercifully, even after the senator died. He's attacked all the Bushes. He's attacked the Romneys. He's attacked the Cheneys. He's basically become like the guy in Goodfellas that they kill. That's what's going on. You said it a half hour ago. The push to convict him, the push to have a trial, is from Mitch McConnell, because Mitch McConnell is done with them. And so are the Bushes, the Cheneys, the McCains, and the Romneys. That's all I have to say. And the Lincoln group is part of the same group that I'm on these webinars with. So, and they just feel he's crossed the line. He's classless. You know, I mean, they can't move forward with him. So they're going to want once and for all get rid of him. Mitch McConnell wants to be the majority leader again, and he can't with Trump around. So right now there's 10 votes. You all know they need 17. So that's where it's at today. So.
And with that, we'll go back to Roger Kaplan. Roger, you're up.
Okay. Sorry. My question is probably, I guess, at a tier lower as far as being a threat to existence. But what is your feeling, Governor, about Joe Biden's decision to promise the 100 million shots in the first 100 days? Was that a mistake politically? Is he setting himself up for failure in a dangerous way? I'm
told that that's probably a pretty easy goal to reach. I don't know how many of you have that it really it should not be difficult to do that. Now, you know, we're seeing a fair amount of confusion here at this point as to what's going on, and a lot of that has to do with Trump and his, you know, Trump couldn't manage his way out of a paper bag, for God's sake. I mean, it's so bad. But what I'm hearing is that should not be a difficult goal to reach, and what Joe has got to do is exceed it. I mean, if we're going to really stop this thing. So I don't think that's a mistake. But I do think that that if there's going to be a trial, it ought to be relatively short. And I don't think a couple of weeks is too short. And then a decision ought to be made. Can they get 17? Don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
Heath, you're up. First question ever. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to thank my friend Tim for getting me involved in this, and also Governor. It's a real treat. My degree's in history, so it's really exciting to be involved in this. And my question is about, I've now done organizing in California. I left California to do Biden-Harris stuff in Colorado. We also elected John Hickenlooper and Jason Crow from my region.
Yep.
And we got 155 million people to vote in this election. And my question is how we keep them involved, because the biggest thing that I see in the different states I've done organizing, the enemy to organizing is cynicism. And there's a lot of people, there are a lot of things that people believe are common sense and need to get done, like getting rid of the Electoral College and DC statehood and combating climate change. Barring big wins on these things, how do we keep those 155 million invested, and how do we make sure that they vote in 2 years?
You try to involve them deeply and actively in party activities, something that we have not done very well, frankly. And I mean deeply and actively involved. I mean, those of you who've come to these things before have had to listen to me talk about how you organize at the grassroots, something which I'm sorry to say I did not do well in 1988, which is one of the reasons why I feel so strongly about it. I mean, I would have been elected dog catcher if it hadn't been for fantastic grassroots organizations that we were able to put together. And I'm very proud of the fact that when I met Elizabeth Warren for the first time, I had never met her. I knew she was, I admired the work that she had done and what she was doing in Washington as well as at the law school in Cambridge. And she came over to meet Kitty and me. And she had to listen to the Dukakis speech. If you really want to, you need a precinct captain and 6 neighborhood captains in every single precinct in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We've got 2,157 precincts. You need 2,157 precinct captains, each of whom recruits 6 neighborhood captains, and their job is to make personal contact on an ongoing basis with every single voting household. Not once, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. She did it. She did it. And you know, about 5 days before her first election, the 2 major Boston newspapers ran polls. One of them said that Brown was going to win. The other one said it was going to be tied. She won by 9 percentage points. What did it? A great precinct-based organization. And that's what we've got to do, folks. You know, this can't be just kind of every 2 years we kind of decide, well, we're going to do it, we're not going to do it. And I hope people are both empowered, encouraged, and scared enough to understand that we must do that. This isn't just something you kind of decide, you know, a few days before the election that you're going to be involved in. And I mean that. Now, I think we've got a great opportunity to do that because the other side is in disarray. But they're not going to be in disarray for long. We haven't really talked about what's going to happen to the Republican Party here. But again, I don't want to keep going back to this Arizona thing. It just happened to be an important story in terms of what's going on. A conservative, but I gather fairly decent governor, Cindy McCain, and a few other folks are all that's left of John McCain's party. And in point of fact, the Republican Party in Arizona is to the right of Marie Antoinette and doesn't mind saying so. So my own sense is I think that's where the Republican Party is going to be going for a while, which gives us a great opportunity to reach out and build a first-class, grassroots-based organization that can really go out and win elections. If the guy from Ohio is running for re-election, is not running for re-election, we got to take that state. We got to take that state. Take a good candidate, and there are good candidates, but we've got to get back to the door knocking and the grassroots stuff, and involve young people actively at that level. And we've got great young people out there, folks. You know, I taught them for 19 years. They're terrific kids. There's lots out there to do, and I think we can do it. But we've got to focus on that, and focus on issues that people care about in their communities in their states. Very, very important.
Andrew, you're up next.
Well, yes, thank you, Governor, for being here. My question is about getting anything done legislatively. I'm worried that the current Senate rules will make it impossible for the Biden legislative agenda to move forward. And I wonder whether we really need to change those rules and how you feel about maybe even having, pardon the expression from an astronomer, a big bang blowing up the filibuster.
No, I think we ought to get rid of the filibuster. I think we ought to get rid of the Electoral College, particularly the Electoral College. I mean, this is crazy. You win by 7 million votes, but you almost lose, or 3 million, or whatever. So now, can we do all of those things in a year or two? No, but I think we ought to be out there advocating for them, and at the same time working the grassroots as intensively as we possibly can. I think that's part of the problem. There's no reason why, working folks in this country ought to be voting Republican. And they're doing it. Why are they doing it? Because we're not connecting with them. We're not connecting with them, folks. Imagine West Virginia, sheepers, creepers. So lots to do, but I think we know how to do it. I don't think this is an impossible task by a long shot.
Okay, we have Vincent, then we've got Kevin Wilk, then we've got Bennett Kelly. You're up, Vincent. Or did you already ask your question?
He spoke.
He's trying to unmute himself.
I actually, Governor, I want to thank you. I'm 63 years old, and I'm the founder of a technology nonprofit. And I owe my entire career to moving to Massachusetts in 1979. And I actually, with a friend of mine, worked on your 78 campaign where you were defeated by Ed King. I know that sounds hard to believe.
For shame, for shame.
And actually, I thought that Trump would lose to Hillary Clinton. And actually, I tell people on webinars, actually, that was not my biggest surprise. The biggest surprise I ever had was Governor Dukakis losing in 1978 to Ed King, which of course no one remembers. So I just want to thank you for everything. And, I'm on a lot of, I ended up meeting a lot of politicians, and I got to know Senator Kerry well because he was the sponsor of the National Nanotechnology Initiative, which I'm the founder of. And I got to go to the White House with President Bush. And like I said, I moved to Massachusetts because of 128, which you created with the help of Senator Kerry and Senator Kennedy. And I've met all these senators. You are the most modest person I'd ever met. You're the most humblest I ever met. I lived in Longwood Towers, and I just want to give everybody a story. I lived in Longwood Towers, and when I lived in Massachusetts, and you had been defeated for president, and I went down to the T in front of Longwood Towers in January of 1989 to get on the T to go to work. And here you were waiting in the cold, like me, to get on the T. And you were a presidential candidate 2 months before. And I tell this story to everybody. And you are so unique. And what you say about President Trump, and I horrible that I have to even say the word president, he is worse than most of the people on the call can understand, because politicos like me, who had worked on campaigns for Democrats and Republicans, the people that worked for him are so incompetent and so evil, you just can't understand. No one on this call would understand it. Lastly, I just want to say, I don't know if you've read this book, Governor. Have you read this book about the 1980s?
I have not read the book.
But have you heard about it? It's a book,
yeah.
It's a book on, and I know it would be difficult for you to read, but all my political friends that supported you and campaigned for you in 78 and 82, you know, we think this is probably the best political book ever written, and it's about the 88 campaign. And I know it would be difficult for you to read, but, you know, we have historians on this call, and Bob's had many historians, and I've talked to them, and I tell them, you know, the 1988 campaign was maybe the beginning of what you see with the Trump crazy writer supporters, because even the Bush people have said that Bush 41's greatest regret was that horrible Willie Orton ad. And some of the Bush people that I'm friends with really feel that started, you know, this polarization, and then it was made worse by Newt Gingrich. But that's just, you know, all I have to say. I could talk to you forever. Thank you for your service to the country. I'm starting to get a little emotional. I want to thank you for everything. My health isn't good, but you know, thank you for everything.
Well, you're nice to say that, but I blew that election. And,
don't.
I should have had a dog.
I know you're pretty.
I should have had. I should have had Reverend Warnock's
most
dog.
people on this call don't even realize that Senator Kerry, before he was senator, was the lieutenant governor running with you in 1982.
That's right.
And when Senator Dukakis, who I worked on his campaign, got cancer, as you know, Senator Kerry, that's when he ran, and you helped him. You helped Senator Kerry reestablish himself as lieutenant governor, because most of the people on this call don't know he lost for Congress in 1974.
He did. Yeah.
So you were such a great advocate of him. And I get by the way, I get the opportunity to talk to him, and he says the greatest things about you. So
he's a good guy.
I'm going to talk to him in a couple of weeks from now. So thank you so much for everything.
Vincent, thank you so much. And before we go on to Kevin Wilk, Richard Ben Kramer is a Rochester native. There you go. Went to Brighton High School, and Kevin, you're up.
Thank you, Bob. And again, thank you, Governor Dukakis. Good to see you again. Hopefully next time it'll be in person over lunch again. So I'm going to change my question, because the question I had was regarding the impeachment. I think we've exhausted that topic. I want to ask you about the Supreme Court. And obviously we had the Republicans in the Senate steal the seat from Merrick Garland without even holding a vote 4 years ago. And then when Ruth Bader Ginsburg unfortunately dies a month before the election, they quickly replaced her. I think it was less than a month. So what do you think about adding another justice or two to the Supreme Court? Would that just be completely past the line, or is that something that should be reasonably discussed?
I don't think that would be a good thing to do. I mean, we've got a lot of opportunity for change here, Kevin. Packing the court didn't work for Roosevelt, and I'm not sure it would be welcome, notwithstanding what happened. And you know, people do change over time. We'll see what this new group does, but with all the other stuff that Biden and company have to do, I think this would be pretty tough and difficult.
Thank you.
Bennett Kelly, you're up. Bennett, Candace, and Miguel, and Mark Danziger. Did we lose Bennett? You might have lost Bennett. Oh no. In that case, Candace, you're up.
No, I'm not. Everything's been answered. Thanks very much.
Miguel, you're up.
Here we go.
Lisa. No, I'm sorry, Miguel then Lisa. So Miguel, you're up.
Okay, good. Yeah, my question was, as a presidential candidate and as a governor of Massachusetts, there's somebody else, Mitt Romney, who is obviously now in the Republican Party from Utah, and he has kind of shown some spine and some, some backbone, and voted the first time and probably the second time for the impeachment. Is he working from a position of moral conviction, or is it that mixed with him hoping to gather up the remnants of the Republican Party after Trump and Trumpism hopefully leave the planet? Also, quick one, I just wanted you to possibly say hello to Olympia, who I photographed about 25 years ago in North Jersey. I think it was the New Jersey Theater Alliance she was involved with.
Yep.
Long time ago, but she was delightful.
She's
chatted for a while.
She's older, obviously. She's a couple of years older than I am, so she's struggling a little bit, but she's pretty special. She's pretty special.
She was just beaming. Yeah.
Great.
So what about Mitt?
I think he's speaking from a position of conviction. He wasn't a great governor.
No.
He really was there to try to run for president. And in that sense, didn't spend an awful lot of time working on his job. But I think what he's saying and doing these days is from a real sense of conviction, and more power to him, because he's certainly not winning friends and influencing people in the base of the Republican Party. And again, I come back to that, folks. I mean, I don't want to overdo what happened in Arizona. It seems to me that increasingly the Republican Party is in the hands of people who love Donald Trump. And I think they're coming back and kind of assuming control or responsibility for the Republican Party is not likely to happen, at least for a long time. I may be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but it looks as if those folks have pretty much taken over.
Well,
and driven good people out of there.
All right, Lisa, you're up.
Governor, I just wanted to get back to what you stated about targeted economic development.
Yeah.
And in Rochester, we have Rochester, New York. The tax exempt, to attract businesses, our local government is giving businesses tax exempt for up to 10 years. So
that's a mistake.
Exactly. So I was wondering, what are some incentives to draw those companies in without giving them such large tax exemptions?
Don't give them tax exemptions, but give them plenty of support and assistance when it comes to the possibility of their investing in your state. We did not use, when I was governor, we did not use tax exemptions often, rarely. I was opposed to them. Otherwise you basically give your tax base away, but we provided a hell of a lot of help in other ways. And I'm not going to waste your time talking about what those were, but if we could, take the city of Lowell, which was a disaster when I became governor. And it was a city I knew because that's where all the Greeks settled when they came to Massachusetts, and that included my dad and his family, and Olympia's dad and her family. And it wasn't that we were passing out tax breaks, which, by the way, often don't work.
They're not working.
They're
bankrupting our school systems.
Well, there you are. It's convincing your business community that you care about them, you'll work with them, and you'll do everything you can to be helpful to them, but not tax breaks. Because you don't know whether they're going to work or not work.
Right.
And by God, it worked. Now, I talked about regional development, talked about pulling people together, and saying, okay, tell us what we can do to be helpful. They rarely said, give us a tax break. But they said, for example, look, we got a piece of land over here and we think it can work, but nobody's helping us with it, and so on and so forth. A lot of this was just hands-on support and assistance, not in a kind of financial sense, but in terms of the kinds of things you can do. Training workers, helping them with bureaucratic stuff, and being a presence and available to them when they needed you. Had a lot more to do with our success than tax breaks. And I think you're right. I mean, they just, they're untargeted. You don't really know. Now, would we occasionally provide some direct assistance? Yeah, but it was targeted. It wasn't a tax break.
Right.
It was, we'd provide a grant for this or that or something else if we knew exactly what it was going to do and where it was going. And that was fine. We brought the business community into the process. Said, okay, what do you think we can do to be helpful? Again, very rarely was it tax breaks, job training, a lot of that kind of thing. And by the way, for the most part, it worked. Now we still have parts of the state that need help, southeastern part of the state, the western part of the state. But if you're gonna provide financial assistance, one of the things you want to make sure is that it's going for the purpose for which it was intended. And undifferentiated tax breaks, you can't use them because you don't know whether or not they're going to be effective. So we did some grants, but they required a direct response, direct investment, direct job creation, not this undifferentiated tax break stuff. It's a mistake, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we go to Mark Danziger, you look back at our hometown that Lisa and I grew up in, Rochester, which really was consider even Tocqueville talked about Rochester in the 1820s, for those of us who had to read it. And then, Rochester in the last 25 years has gone through a very difficult period. The collapse of Eastman Kodak, the sale of Bausch, the shrinkage of Xerox, which really drove in many respects the local economy. And, of course, you had all the other companies that fed off of Kodak, Xerox, and Bausch and Lomb. And God knows that, it's heartbreaking to watch and to see where Rochester is trying to find a way out of it. And it's very hard. It's extremely difficult. So Mark, we'll go with Mark, Elizabeth, and Lou Frillman, and we'll wrap things up. Mark, you're up.
Bob, let me just say one quick thing. Sometimes, and I'll try to be brief on this, sometimes it's the most unlikely thing that will work. Northern Berkshire County was a disaster when I became governor. I mean, the traditional industries were leaving, and nothing was replacing them. Today, Northern Berkshire is thriving. Why? Because the state got deeply and actively involved in investing in Mass Mocha, a cultural enterprise, which has completely revived Northern Berkshire County. Who would have thunk it? And by the way, attracted, I don't know, 300,000 guests, more than a lot of other major, this was a cultural investment. So you never know. You never know. You just got to keep working with people. I'm sorry.
Mark Danziger, you're up.
Mark, where are you?
Did we lose him? He might be on, we might have lost him. Then we go to Elizabeth, and we'll throw Gina in there as well.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to ask a question. And we talked about this a little bit, but I guess I'm really curious what your impressions are on the long-term sustainability is of QAnon. That it's so hard for me to wrap my head around them because their beliefs are, if you can even call them beliefs, they're so crazy. It doesn't seem sustainable in the long term. It doesn't seem like it should be this far. And just adjacent to that, behind that is, it seems to me like they can't really want what they say they want. Like they can't possibly be seeking power in order to eradicate Satanism and pedophilia rings. So I'm just wondering if you have any sense of what do they want? Like, what are they for? What is their end goal?
I have no idea.
Can't be what they say they want.
I have no idea. I don't know what they want. I don't know where they're headed. I don't know. Do they have support out there? If so, how much?
Do they have leaders? Who, like the followers, they actually seem brainwashed by disinformation, but that would suggest that someone is brainwashing them. Someone with an agenda is brainwashing them. I can't figure out who's the leader and who's the follower and what they're after.
We've always had these fringe groups. It's not as if we haven't had them over the course of the history of the country. But I don't know anything about them. I don't know who they are, what they're for. They're interested in pedophilia. They targeted a restaurant in Washington, D.C., didn't they?
Yeah.
Owned by a Greek American, for God's sake.
But they're less and less fringe. I mean, now they're attaining power, and I don't know exactly why.
We'll see. Yeah. I mean, but in the meantime, we've got to be strong and get stronger and stronger, folks. We've really got to take advantage of this opportunity to really get this country moving in the right direction.
So we'll go to Gina, and then we'll finish up with Lou Frillman. So Gina, you're up.
Hi, thank you. This is very stimulating conversation. So I live in Los Angeles. I've been a community organizer and involved in local politics on the neighborhood council. I've been advocating for affordable housing because we have such a housing and homelessness crisis here in LA.
You do.
Yes, but I'm also a rural geographer. I was trained in that for many years, and I've studied economic and population change in Kansas. I've studied small-scale farmers' efforts to diversify their markets in Oklahoma. And personally, I inherited my grandparents' home in Southwest Kansas, where there are abundant economic opportunities, job opportunities. And I can tell you that the housing crisis in these remote rural areas is intense. I get calls all the time from people who want to rent, but I just have the one house that I'm renting out. So I just want to ask you what your thoughts are on the housing crisis, the affordability crisis, and to urge all of us to consider that in these rural areas, the housing crisis is happening there too. There hasn't been investment for decades. There's no place to rent. There's nothing affordable to buy. In many of these remote rural areas where there actually are industries that are attracting migrants. I mean, people are coming in from Nebraska and Las Vegas and Texas to get a job in Southwest Kansas. And they call me because they want to rent, but I have a tenant and there's nothing, there's no housing. So
Got to build it.
What are your thoughts?
You got to produce it. I mean, we know how to produce affordable housing. It's not a new thing for us. Now we did go through a period where we were building a lot of public housing that didn't work for a variety of reasons. And I'm very proud of the fact that my state, and I was involved in this, was really the pioneer in building mixed income housing. And the interesting thing about this, folks, was that I was on a special commission on low-income housing at the time. I was in the legislature, and we had 3 industry representatives on this commission. And all 3 of them said to us, look, you don't want to keep building this low-income housing because it's turning out to be a disaster. You want to mix incomes. And I said, can you do this? I mean, can you actually, they said, if you keep the low-income component down to no more than 25%, it will work. Well, I was a skeptic, folks. But these 3 guys, they happened to be at the time, 2 of them were Republicans, although I knew them well because I knew their kids. And the third was an African American who grew up in Cambridge and became a millionaire doing housing at that time in East Cambridge, where you could buy a 3-decker for $10,000. And today, just all of our subsidized housing in Massachusetts is mixed income. And it works. It works. So,
well,
now you gotta, I mean, if you're talking about Kansas, you know a lot more about Kansas than I do. I mean, what kind of housing could you produce? Under what circumstances? Can you mix incomes? Or people prefer individual houses and so on and so forth? They'll require some subsidy, but that's okay if, in point of fact, they can produce the kind of housing that you need. And does, at the present time, does the United States have a serious national housing strategy? Hell no. I mean, it disappeared. Don't want to go back to those old public housing things that we did back in the 50s and 60s, which turned out to be themselves disasters. But mixed income works. It really does work. Now, you know a lot more about Kansas than I do, so I don't know what folks there would what kind of response it would be. But if there's a need, and we can provide some housing, some subsidies with relatively low cost and low rentals or low ownership costs, for that matter, why don't we do it? That's when I talk about regional development, when I talk about bringing regions together and identifying their economic issues and working with them. That's exactly what we're talking about. Now, until you spoke, I wasn't aware that Kansas had an incipient boom here when it came to, but I mean, that's important to know. And there ought to be a, whatever you want to call it, regional development strategy for those states where they work together, get some public assistance, but have an opportunity to do what this crew that I work with. And to repeat, I was a skeptic. I said, "Gee, I don't think that'll work. I don't think you can mix high income, middle income, and low income and make it works spectacularly well." There may be a Kansas version of it, but I'd want to be interested in what their response would be, but there's no reason why we can't provide decent housing for people.
In the Los Angeles context, they have incentives for developers to mix the incomes in these market rate projects.
Yeah.
But so I understand you're saying it works, but the problem is that there's no mandate for the percentage for the number of units that would be dedicated for extremely low or low income. So although it works, it's still not producing enough affordable units to meet the demand without a mandate for the percentage. So
well,
you end up,
look,
yeah.
It's a matter of public policy. If we're going to invest some public money in housing, then obviously public policy has to have something to do with what's required. In our case, and it was, again, these real estate folks who said, keep that cap at about 25%, you're going to be fine. It works. Trust me, it works. And it was the real estate guys who said, try it, it'll work, It works. We do almost no publicly assisted housing now in Massachusetts that isn't mixed income.
And with that, we've reached 1:30. It's about, we'll wrap this up. I want to thank Mike for joining us yet again. It's like this when the birds return to San Juan Capistrano, Mike Dukakis joins us, and we can begin another Luncheon Society season. Again, we got a bunch of stuff coming up. Joyce Carolus will be on the 22nd of February. We'll have something maybe between now and then, and we'll just have a fun year on this. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming. Want to thank
thank you.
Yes, and have a great day.
And we'll see you in San Francisco soon, I hope.
Yes. Once this damn pandemic runs its course. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.